Skyward Sword HD finally announced with two Joy-Cons that look completely different from each other.
Beautiful.
We don't know who's
Beautiful
making it, but it, to me, doesn't seem like Nintendo is making it, which makes me think Tantalus is, because when they remade Wind Waker HD, it got a huge update. They even said they used what became the Breath of the Wild engine, so like a beta version of that engine, I guess. And then Twilight Princess came later, made by Tantalus, but reused the Twilight Princess engine. I've been saying for a long time, I think Tantalus is remaking Twilight Princess, and it looks like with it using the same engine that it could be. And we didn't know 𝐓𝐻𝐿 was making Link's Awakening until like around E3, I think. But you were right about the 10th anniversary.
Yes. It feels good.
Yeah. I didn't think it was going to actually... Like, I thought it would, but originally I was thinking it would come last year or the year before. I didn't think it was coming in 2021 because I thought Breath of the Wild 2 would be coming in 2021. And I was wrong, I guess. But it still could, who knows. But they said they had nothing to show, and if the game's going to release later this year and they have nothing to show, then that makes me think development isn't going as good as he made it seem. But they could just be saving it for an actual Zelda Direct, if they do have one. But yeah, what was your overall thoughts on Skyward Sword? We can kind of go over like the, I guess, 5 things each that we liked to organize it a bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're saving their Breath of the Wild 2 news, but Skyward Sword looks great. The game has got a neat visual style already, but a lot of that was bred out of necessity on the Wii. But I think now that it's on Twitch and they can really polish it up here, it looks great. The Joy-Cons look fantastic. I'm seeing in the chat here people are already pre-ordering it.
Yeah,
so,
you should probably get on that and pre-order those Joy-Cons.
I should if the pre-orders go up. Right after this, I'm gonna do it.
They did the same thing with the original Skyward Sword.
With the Wii remote.
Yeah.
Yeah, except I'm glad it's not just gold. Like that's the thing is they tend to, with Zelda stuff, they tend to just be like, it painted gold, done. The Zelda, they had like the Majora's Mask 3DS. It's gold. It's got the Majora's Mask on it. Done. There was a DS, like an original DS for Zelda. It's gold. It's done. Right, etc. You get the idea. But yeah, I always feel like I don't know. I'm glad that this have like a more that it's a nice blue and purpley sort of look. Right. It's great.
Yeah, the Joy-Cons,
fantastic.
And they're both like, it's not one just completely green and one completely gold or whatever. Like, they actually have cool little designs on them as well.
Yeah, the designs look great. Let me see. I'm just gonna go back to it here.
And the interesting thing is, like, everyone, because of Aonuma's words saying that maybe it was Aonuma, someone at Nintendo kept on saying it would be impossible to have traditional controls for Skyward Sword because the whole game was based on it. And then even before they showed Skyward Sword, I was talking about on the stream how they could use traditional controls with the right stick, being able to swing your weapon which way. Because when I played on Dolphin, the emulator, I was using a special version that allowed you to do that. And that's how I was playing through the game. And I was like, Nintendo could do this, but make it even easier or better, because they can actually get into the code of the game and customize it for the specific controller, where I'm just manipulating a swing by pressing right. And that is exactly what they did. And I'm calling it. I said they would do it. They did it. And I think that's one win. But you get your win from...
The downsides, though, for having the sword with the right stick is if you're playing that way, you can't use the right stick for the camera. Which was already non-existent on the Wii version because there was no right stick on the Wii. But
so
that's too bad.
they said it was optional for you to switch between the two, or is it at all times both are active?
It said optional button controls.
So maybe
if you're using motion controls, you can use the camera with the right stick.
Yeah.
I still feel like that's going to be the best way to play it still, as with the motion.
Well, yeah. I mean,
and gosh, okay, I guess I'm streaming Skyward Sword again when it comes out. I already streamed it, but the thing is, I was streaming Wii games, right? Like, from my setup, I have to like actually move myself back from my desk to have room for the Wii remote and the sensor bar to talk to each other there, right? But the Joy-Cons don't really have that, because there's no sensor bar needed for it. They don't have that limitation, we'll say. So, but yeah, I just they look so good. I like that one is themed after the sword and the other's themed after the shields. That looks fantastic.
Yeah, I like it, but for people like Geek, who said she would rather play with her left hand as the sword, the way Link normally traditionally is, it's still kind of bad for her, because if it was just as easy to like flip over Ocarina of Time's Master Quest and flip over Twilight Princess, you would imagine they could just flip over Skyward Sword.
That would be nice if they made that an option. The only thing is then walking with the right stick would seem kind of weird. You know what I mean? But the thing is, the Joy-Cons buttons, they match each other. They're completely mirrored, right? So I mean, I feel like it could be doable to have an option where you just flip which Joy-Cons do what. You know, like you just mirror the Joy-Cons, and then if you're lefty, you just can use the lefty. Like I totally will play it with motion controls, but I'm glad they're making button controls optional, because I know that was an obstacle for people.
Yeah.
But I still like either way they should make it optional to flip them, or you know what, actually though, the Switch already has its own button mapping option, right?
That's what I was going to say after you finished.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. So in theory, you could just map your buttons to be opposite if you wanted to, right?
Yeah, but then
for your button controls, at least for the right stick. Yeah, accessibility is important. Like I think I would play it the original way, but if I've always supported making those motion controls optional, because even though it wasn't an option for me, it was for other people, definitely. And the more people that can share the experience and joy of playing this game, the better, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
All right. So, with Skyward Sword, you said, and
speak about it.
yeah, you said that it was possible, and maybe you were just trying to not get yourself too excited, that this could just be all other Nintendo stuff, and they're saving the Zelda stuff. And a lot of people thought that was what they were going to do. And what I was told, even after this Direct was announced, was that this is not the Zelda Direct that I was talking about, is what the person said to me. And it was like, maybe it'll still be on that day, in a couple of days or in a few days or whatever. But they said this was not it. That it was specifically a Zelda thing. And it seems like they might do that, but they didn't mention it. Because when they showed the DLC for Age of Calamity, they didn't show the DLC for Age of Calamity.
They just said
they listed it.
DLC.
Yeah.
Yeah. But none of the footage they even showed was actually new, right?
Right.
So I still stand by that. I even said it before many times. I think there's going to be another Direct. They didn't say a date or anything like I was hoping they would, but I still feel like there's going to be a Zelda Direct for sure at some point this year.
Okay, so there is one big change to Skyward Sword that affected every single person who played it, and Nintendo is always fixing bugs and stuff, changing some things around. We mentioned during the live stream, they added lines to Ocarina of Time, so you could just follow the colored lines and know where to go. Although I think, as you mentioned in your video that you made recently on the Water Temple, you use... Wait, did you use Furor's Wind?
Yeah.
Yeah. I never used that item. So maybe if you do, maybe you are meant to use it, and that's how you get back and forth easier. but it never occurred to me to use
yeah.
it. But yeah, so they've always made changes. Majora's Mask, the changes they made to it, a lot of people didn't like because they changed the actual mechanics of the way they move with the Zora swimming, the Deku hops. They changed the bosses, some of the side quests. Twilight Princess removed some of the Tears of Light segments. Wind Waker shortened the Triforce quest. Do you think there's going to be anything they remove or change in this that they have not mentioned yet?
Well, I think Tetra in my chat here just said the item descriptions. That's gotta be.
That was
because like with, sorry.
No.
with Skyward Sword, that was something they got a lot of criticism over. And then when they were showing off Breath of the Wild in 2016, during their demos, they kept reiterating that that wasn't going to be how it was in Breath of the Wild. They kept being like, they would pick up an item and see the description. They're like, it only shows this one time because it's the first time. After that, it won't show you again. And they were like so desperate to tell us that they had fixed that problem.
Yeah.
So I feel like for this game they have to. They've got to have changed that. Like it, instead of showing it every single time. Yeah, like because that was such an annoyance in Skyward Sword. Like, every time you pick up an item. It's like, I've gotten 50 of these amber relics already. Why do I have to read about it again? Just let me pick it up and be done with it.
Yeah, and that was the one thing I mentioned that plagued everyone who played it, because there's just no way to get around that. I think they actually fans modded a version that fixed it. But
that's hilarious.
Yeah. But anyways, with are there any like gameplay mechanics or story elements that you think will be shortened or removed? The only thing I could think of is like maybe they make the silent realm a bit less
I was
scary.
thinking the silent realms, yeah. Maybe just having fewer Tears of Light that you need to collect.
Yeah.
In each one. Although I don't mind the silent realms all that much, but there is one thing actually, and that's the Thunder Dragon's Trials. In the original version, to get all of there's like at least two things that you need to get from there if you want to complete the game, and that's the Hylian Shield and a heart piece, right?
Yeah.
But in order to get those, you have to basically opt out of going to the next round and take the reward and quit.
Isn't it like 8 for the Hylian Shield?
Something like that.
And you wouldn't know to
quit.
quit.
If those rewards, like you could even have it be like less rupees for some of the different stages to lessen it. But I feel like those rewards should stack instead of having you quit the Thunder Dragon Trials to get the shield and then go back into it to get the heart piece again. You should be able to be like, they should just stack through one go, so you don't have to repeat that. Or just change one of the heart. Maybe just make the Hylian Shield the last one and take the heart piece out of there and put it somewhere else so that you don't have to repeat it.
Yeah. So I was thinking if they did something like the Bombchu Alley girl in Ocarina of Time, where she's like, do you want to play? Okay, this is what you can win. That way you would know to stop.
Right.
If you beat it instead of continuing.
Well, that's kind of what he does in it, right? Because he's like, okay, if you stop now, he'd collapse like this. He goes, if you stop now, you can get this prize. If not, if you want to keep going, then the next prize will be this.
I don't remember him doing that. So you know when to stop. Because I remember, I skipped the Hylian Shield without knowing it was the Hylian Shield. Maybe I'm just misremembering.
The first time I played, I skipped the Hylian Shield too because I thought that they would stack, that I would still get it, but I wanted to keep going to see what else I could get, But no, that wasn't the case. If you just so it's not communicated very well, but he does tell you what the rewards are as you're going through it. But I still feel like they could fix that. Even just put the Hylian Shield at the end and take the heart piece out and put it somewhere else, and then you don't have to play through those trials twice, or make the rewards stack instead of you have to opt out of the one reward to get the next one.
Yeah.
Pardon me, sorry.
No, I imagine, for me, the Lanayru Desert seemed a lot harder, and maybe that's just because you get there later on than the other areas. I wonder if they would make any changes to it. But they don't really make overworld changes. They just changed individual quests or enemies. And in Twilight Princess, they flipped the hero mode. Was it called hero mode in Twilight Princess? HD?
I think so. Hero
And
mode.
then, so do you think, because we were talking earlier about flipping it, do you think that's how they could use the hero mode in this? Which in Japan, for everyone who doesn't know, it's called spicy mode.
Is it called spicy mode?
Yeah.
That's so funny because Pikmin's hard mode is called spicy mode or ultra spicy mode. But okay, thing is, Skyward Sword already had a hero mode, but it did not flip the map.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
That would be cool if they did it, because
like the Master
that's
Quest for Ocarina of Time. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Master Quest.
Great minds.
So that would be cool if they did. And I just had a thought as well. Amiibo support.
Mm-hmm. Loftwing Amiibo.
What did we get? I mean, I want a Loftwing Amiibo. It's so bad. But I feel like
you know what would be amazing?
It's just going to be item drops. But okay, what would be amazing?
If they did the same thing. No, if they did the same thing. Yes, if Wolflink was in Skyward Sword. But
from Breath of the Wild, just put him in Skyward Sword.
But if they did the same thing for Skyward Sword, connecting to Breath of the Wild 2, as they did for Twilight Princess, connecting to Breath of the Wild, to where instead of Wolflink, you get a Loftwing.
Oh.
Because.
And then depending, like, on how much progression or how many hearts you have, it might impact the Loftwing's stats in Breath of the Wild.
Like, I don't think it would be flying around attacking the goblins, but like if you wanted to fly over Hyrule, like that's something that I was saying for a long time that I wished would have been in the original, because flying over Skyloft is great, but everything else is kind of covered by cloud, and you can't really get that amazing view that you imagine when they first tell you, yeah, you can ride a Loftwing, fly around. Mm-hmm. You're like, oh, you'll be able to see the mountains, the lake, everything, but it's like, no, you just, the clouds.
It's clouds.
So if they did that in Breath of the Wild 2, almost similar to the way you get through Zora's River in Twilight Princess, where you're flying on that one weird thing as Wolflink.
Mm-hmm.
But that's more of like a quest thing you can't really explore. But there's no reason that Breath of the Wild 2 wouldn't allow you to explore. But maybe that's asking too much. But if they did add something, that's what I would want them to add for Amiibo support.
The thing is, like, the bird, like, people would be like, oh, Loftwing would be too game breaking. But I feel like it just make it an end game thing. Yeah. Even. You know, like, and
like more game breaking than a motorcycle?
Exactly.
That you
like
fuel by putting wood in?
Exploring goes, if we already have a paraglider and Rivali's Gale, which has a cooldown, sure, but like there's basically nowhere we can't go already.
And you can already warp, and they even give you that item that lets you pick where you want to warp.
Yeah, so I don't see how a Loftwing would be any more game breaking than that, right?
Yeah.
Like, isn't that the whole point? Is that you can go anywhere, anyways? So that's the whole point of the game.
Yeah, and like if there's an area on the map that isn't discovered yet, then it can just be like, oh, the Loftwing's afraid to go in, kind of like Epona going into Hyrule Castle.
Putting him into Breath of the Wild 2, if there's like, and I think they will, right? Like if you've got this underground dungeons or underground exploration stuff, you just can't bring your Loftwing down there.
Yeah,
you can't go underground. You can't go into dungeons. There you go. What game breaking? We already know this overworld that we're going to explore.
Mm-hmm.
We're very familiar with it, right? So I don't see the problem. Maybe there's just some places it won't fly. Like he won't go into the desert, or he won't go over Death Mountain because he's like, it's too haunt as he's flapping.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Or maybe there could even be a height restriction to where it's like, you can't reach the top of that. Or like if, depending on how high Hyrule Castle rises up, then it's like, well, you can fly, but it can't get that high.
Wait. What if you have to unlock it like later in the game, because that's the only way to get to Hyrule Castle. It rises up. You can't get to it until you unlock your big bird friend.
That would be interesting.
That would be so cool.
That's actually how
it makes more sense than just them teleporting you up for some reason or something, right?
Yeah, but that's the exact same thing that I theorized when we didn't know that Va Meadow was a divine beast. Everyone thought it was like an island or something.
Yeah, 'cause it's hard to see.
Yeah, I'm like, you're either going to need super duper long claw shots, or like stack them, like tie them together or something and then use it, or get a Loftwing. I didn't know there was going to be other characters like Loftwings that would just fly. Yeah, what if it's not a Loftwing? What if it's like you just ride Teba, I guess, since Rivali's dead.
Yeah, I mean, he's your bird friend now.
Yeah, and you do kind of ride him in Breath of the Wild, but it's not, again, it's not explorable. So the game mechanic's there, but it's not explorable as that. But with other Amiibo, do you see any getting an Amiibo?
I really want there to be more to it, but I just have a hunch it's going to be just item drops like Breath of the Wild has.
Yeah, but what specific Amiibo do you think would be released? Or do you think it would just be one or none? Because I could see...
I mean, they already have the Skyward Sword Link Amiibo, like for the it's like the 30th anniversary edition Amiibos, right?
Yeah, but his beginning outfit.
But that I've got still in box behind me there. But I feel like they'll do a new... Like with Link's Awakening, they had a Link's Awakening Link Amiibo, right?
Yeah.
Like just for that game, right? So I feel like it's lame because we have so many Links, but I feel like they're gonna just have a Skyward Sword Link Amiibo.
Yeah. I just laughed because I thought a Groose Amiibo.
Maybe a Zelda. Groose would be great, but probably not. But maybe Zelda, maybe Impa.
Mm-hmm.
But what I really want is Loftwing. Would be a really cool Amiibo to have.
Yeah.
Like if Samus Returns can give us a Metroid Amiibo that's actually squishy, why can't I get a bird?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And some of the Amiibo look almost identical to the more expensive actual statues they have.
Mm-hmm.
And they have the Loftwing statue. Like Miss Click has one. And I think Mossy's from Zelda Dungeon has one.
Right.
They're like $500, so I'll never own one.
I'm not gonna spend that. I'll spend a lot of money on Amiibos, but those are like $15.
Yeah,
not
you can have
$100.
you can buy like 50 Amiibo.
Yeah, exactly. I can buy a lot of Amiibos for that price.
So yeah, with you just see item drops and stuff. You don't see
I realistically, I really think it's going to be item drops.
No Twilight Princess special dungeon.
The game originally wasn't built around it, right? But if they did a special dungeon like they did for Twilight Princess, sweet. I'm so down. That would be really cool.
I would hope it's not a gauntlet style dungeon, and it's more of a traditional style.
Yeah. That was the thing. The Cave of Shadows, is that what it was called?
Yeah, it was the same as the other cave, but wolf.
Yeah, it was just the Cave of Ordeals again, but you're a wolf Link, and it was fine because it was just bonus stuff, right?
Yeah.
But still, I kind of wish there was more to it, like a more proper dungeon. So if they want to do, the thing is, like, you look at with Link's Awakening DX, they added the color dungeon, which is one of the, not the largest, but one of the largest dungeons in that game, right?
Didn't they add a dungeon to A Link to the Past as well on the Game Boy Advance?
Yeah, they added the Palace of the Four Swords to A Link to the Past for the Game Boy Advance version, right? And then, like, those are some proper dungeons, you know, with some cool challenge. And I'm fine with like boss rushes and stuff like that, but like the gauntlet style, like Wolf Link's fighting wasn't fantastic. I would much rather do any combat as Link in his human form anyways, right? But it's good. Anyways, the game is already solid, so even I just have a feeling they're probably not going to add much to it content-wise. But that's maybe I'm just being pessimistic because they haven't been doing as much stuff like that lately, historically. So
yeah, and I think Skyward Sword doesn't really have anything that it needs removed. So time spent removing something could potentially otherwise be spent adding stuff, because it's just the Silent Realm was what seemed like it was the hardest for everyone, but it was kind of meant to be hard. It's not like it was long, it's just getting caught.
You know what you could do, even like an Amiibo functionality, is like you see this in like Mario Odyssey, for example, the Peach Amiibo. It would give you a heart to refill your health instantly, right? Pretty simple, straightforward thing. But during some of the levels, I swear the only way I could get through it was having that Peach Amiibo handy at all times, right?
Yeah.
because like, especially like some of the very end game levels, they're pretty brutal. So what if you have, as one of the amiibo drops, if you're in the Silent Realm, it drops like one of those items, like the little fruits that freeze the guardians in place. And it's just like you're in a pinch, just scan the amiibo, bloop. Even if it has a cooldown or you can only use it like once per day, you're just in a pinch, there you go. Alleviate some of that stress.
And with Twilight Princess, the Ganondorf amiibo doubled the damage you had. So
yeah, if they do that,
a Demise amiibo.
Demise amiibo would be super cool. To give it like an extra hard mode.
Yeah. Is there anything they could do for like switching to Midna? They made easier, just a tap of a button on the Wii U. Is there anything equivalent to that they could do? The only thing I could think of is like if you towards the end of the game you have to travel back and forth through time quite a bit, but that seems like something that should still stick to the Gate of Time.
I'm just thinking about the controllers. Maybe they showed this in the trailer, okay, but the Joy-Cons have more buttons than the Wii Remote and Nunchuck, obviously, right? Yes. So what if, instead of when you have to change your weapons, instead of having the pointer option where you point at the screen and then like select the weapon, if you just like have a shortcut to like scroll with the directional buttons through your weapons, through your inventories. So like you press left to you just scroll through your items.
Would those buttons not be used for what? Switching like items?
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like just switching items.
No, not switching. I mean the equipped items you have, because you to like left, right, and down.
That's a good point. Like you could. The thing is, Skyward Sword, you could only equip one item at a time.
Oh, okay.
Right. So, but you could switch items very quickly. So yeah, maybe they have it so that X.
But then it could use the other buttons for switching the weapons.
That's true, because now you got A, B, X, Y. So X and Y did not exist on the Wii. Right?
Yeah.
You've got two shoulder buttons that were not there on the Wii. Plus your 4 directional buttons. There's so many more buttons.
You're a genius,
and they could just
Daniel.
make little tiny tweaks to like your item or inventory management. Like your pouch, right, was with minus, where you have like your shields. So you could map maybe some of those to some of those buttons there, like your shields, your bottles in your adventure pouch, and then your inventory, you map them to like X and Y. Just again, I'm just spitballing here, but like that way, just as far as being able to quickly and conveniently access those things goes.
We're even switching between the like the different things that you would search with the sword, the dowsing thing.
Right. Oh. Okay. If they get rid of dowsing, then that would be fine. I'm just looking at the trailer again, and actually the right.
It's like if they got rid of Phi, Skyward Sword would be okay.
There's the right directional button or the right D-pad. It has a prompt for help, which,
would
if
be
I recall correctly, was the number 2 button on the Wii remote, and it would just tell you the controls.
Map, or was that
one was a
minus?
map, one was the help. So I mean, yeah, you could have like up on the D-pad be your map, even or something like that. I'm curious to see, but yeah, from what I'm seeing here, actually, hang on, I just was going through the trailer again here. It looks like ZR, or ZR for my American friends, is for your items, where it was B on the Wii, if I recall correctly, and R, so your right bumper, is for your pouch. So it looks like they probably didn't
Pouch
change...
is the game items, not weapons.
Pouch would be like where your shield and your bottles.
Yeah.
And medals and things like that are.
So the items that were not weapons. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So I almost feel like if you just have those 2 buttons dedicated to that, like you've got so many more buttons to work with.
Does it
like
say what L is? Like if L or ZL is targeting, then L would be.
Maybe for your shield when you're like punching your shield when you're in handheld, or. The thing is, I guess like they probably have not very many buttons for doing motion control.
Right.
Oh, but hold on, there's a different screenshot. They have a different item for B. On B. So, like, I'm just going through the trailer. There's one shot where it shows ZR for items, and he's using the slingshot. And then there's another part where they're using the bow, and it's with B.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then ZR again with bombs later. So, I'm guessing you can have multiple items equipped then, not just one. Which is great.
And then instead of just pressing the one button, you can choose which button to press.
Yeah. So, if they do it that way, you know, that's good with me.
Yeah.
But I was just thinking they might be minimizing how many buttons they're using. I really hope though, even if they have option where your one setup you can do your detached Joy-Cons for your full motion control experience, all motion control 100%, and then they have your completely no motion controls, just buttons option, right? With where you use the right stick. I would really like to see also a middle ground where you have no motion control for your sword and shield, but still gyro aiming like in Breath of the Wild for things like your bow and stuff like that. I feel like if like even just make it optional, just give me options of what to use motion for and what not to. I feel like that will be the best as far as accessibility and
they've done the gyro thing for like almost every Zelda game since the 3DS.
Yeah. And like Twilight Princess HD, I always use this as my example of best control customization options for a Zelda game, because they gave you the option, do you want first or third person aiming? Do you want motion control aiming on or off? Do you want your inverted axes on or off? And they let you customize and cherry pick which options you want. And I feel like if they do that for Skyward Sword HD, it'll benefit the game in a big way, because what I feel may be my personal optimal playstyle may not be the same as yours or someone else's, right? So, and I love gyro aiming so much. So I don't really like pointer control aiming that much, because I find my wrist gets stiff because I'm always holding things straight outwards like that. But gyro aiming is really natural.
Yeah.
And great. So
do you think so we've talked about the controls and changes they could make, but we haven't really talked about the graphics, which there's not much difference. Like the textures might be updated, but it looks the same as it would running on an emulator, except on an emulator for some reason I mentioned earlier, it has like a halo glow effect around it, like the lights kind of reflecting off of Link, where it doesn't run as perfectly. But this looks kind of like what they did with Twilight Princess HD, which reminds me of, which is why I said that I thought I was right in saying that it was Tantalus, because Nintendo would have, I feel like they would have done a bit more for the graphics, like with Wind Waker.
Yeah, so it looks to me like they did more with Skyward Sword and Wind Waker. Well, okay. Yes and no. So Skyward Sword, no. I gotta back my brain up here. So again, my brain is on overdrive here. With Wind Waker, they did not do much in the way of updates for their textures or polygon counts or anything like that.
No.
But they did up-res everything and gave this nice bloom look to everything, right? Which was a big impact on the visuals.
They changed the lighting
like
a lot.
Yeah, the lighting was the biggest change. But the textures and polygons are, I think, pretty much the same as the GameCube version.
Yeah.
Which is fine, because the GameCube version, honestly, even the GameCube version looks really good.
When
I really like it.
When the grass is like usually just like a green, solid green color, there's not much you can do to really update it.
Yeah, exactly. Skyward Sword HD, they toned down the lighting a bit. It's not quite as bloomy as the original original Twilight Princess is. But they actually did a lot of work with the textures. There's no additional polygons, but almost all the textures in that game in Skyward Sword HD are new textures. But because of it's very true to the art style, but a lot more detailed. But people, of course, we all remember these games with nostalgia goggles, so people are like, it looks the same. But actually, if you do side by sides, all the textures in Skyward Sword, or I keep saying Skyward Sword, in Twilight Princess HD look way better, and look really great. So I feel like on the texture side of things, they did a lot more for Twilight Princess HD, but because of that difference in lighting, the impact isn't as noticeable. Here, it doesn't look to me like any of the textures are really different. But maybe they are.
Yeah, just the same but better.
These little bits of the trailer that we've seen. But definitely it looks like it's rezzed up a little bit, and it looks like, just from watching the trailer, it looks like the frame rate is improved quite a bit as well. Looks like it might be running at 60 frames. Yeah.
It's possible. On the Wii U, Twilight Princess and Wind Waker ran at 30 at 1080p, so if they could do that on the Wii U, I imagine Skyward Sword would easily be able to run at 60 on the Switch. And I think, I imagine the the distance that you can see before things start disappearing
the draw distance,
would be a bit better, because they said the whole reason they went with that art style to begin with was because it was the best looking that they could think of to compete against the HD games that had more power to allow things to be displayed further out. So instead of having something completely disappear, like in a lot of the games, like we made fun of like Grand Theft Auto, when you're in LA and like you go like a few blocks down and you can't see everything's like all foggy and cloudy, and that's usually what it does. But in Skyward Sword, instead of important things just disappearing and vanishing, because you have to see things from really, really far away when you're flying towards them, so they came up with this painting art style so that things would blend into the background as if the background was like a painted picture instead of something just disappearing. So like the texture or the model for it technically does disappear, but the image blends into the background image.
Because it was SD instead of HD.
Yeah,
like,
and
especially on our old TVs, you couldn't really tell the difference.
And because the Nintendo Wii itself just didn't have enough RAM to keep everything on screen when you're flying through the air like that.
Yeah, but yeah, I assume the draw distance will be improved. Because, I mean, like, think about how much the draw distance in Breath of the Wild looks good. I mean, they even use that sort of the idea where they swap out, like, you know, your trees for like two-dimensional trees when you're too far away. But I mean, even then, like Breath of the Wild looks, its style, its visuals are way by and large like superior to Skyward Swords, as they should be.
Yeah.
But like with the hardware for the Switch, like there's no reason this 10-year-old game can't have improved draw distance.
Yeah, especially since 10 years ago it wasn't even on like the HD consoles at the time, which were even more powerful. But they kind of did something a little bit similar with Wind Waker, to where they said because of the Wii U they were able to render out a larger distance to let you sail faster.
Yeah.
So whether that's true or not.
So do you think we're going to get not like the Swift Sail, but maybe the ability for the Loftwing to go faster or boost more? Like.
Oh yeah, I definitely think there would be able to go faster, but I was just meaning in terms of like being able to see things better from a further distance without it disappearing would kind of be like in Wind Waker, because they said that you couldn't sail that fast because the ground would disappear because you'd be going faster than it could render. I don't know if that's true, because some people who've like experimented and modded with the original game says that's not true, that you can speed up the boat and you won't fall off, but that's the excuse that Nintendo used.
The thing is, though, people who are modding it like that, are they running the game on like a PC while they're modding it, or on a GameCube? Because like maybe on your PC, if you're modding it on Dolphin or whatever, you know, it's probably going to be different than what the GameCube
for the extra speed.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not a modder, so I don't. This is a question for our friend Melon, but
but yeah, Skyward Sword. I didn't even think about the Loftwing going faster, but that could totally be something, because they did give you the things to make it go faster. Oh, does that mean with traditional controls you're going to be able to control it normally to fly around?
Maybe. Yeah, yeah, definitely. You'd have to be able to.
That would make the
Without having
ceremony
to-
a lot easier.
Yeah, yeah. Like that part is weirdly hard for the tutorial of the game.
And you can't use arrows on Loftwing, can you?
No.
That would make
No,
some
you
of the.
can't use any items.
That would make the one boss battle a lot easier.
Gosh, no. But can you imagine
Yeah.
if they add that?
Because that was something that they kept on saying that they would have loved to have done in Ocarina of Time, but wasn't able to until better hardware and
Where-
Twilight Princess.
With
So-
the sword, you mean?
Yeah. So with Skyward Sword, I almost said Breath of the Wild. With Skyward Sword, it would be. Would there be many uses for it though? To use an arrow, like they could add it easily, but
Yeah, I mean,
Are
there's
there-
like octo rocks and things like that around the sky and stuff like that. But aside from that, there's that one boss. That's the only one I can.
Yeah.
The one where you fight with 𝐓𝐼𝐬𝐻. That's the only one I can think of that would need arrows.
and
Even still, though, it'd just be cool to have.
yeah, and clearly Nintendo did think that you needed to go faster in Skyward Sword because it put those warp tunnels that you could go through and it would like
Yeah.
shoot you out.
That's
So
true.
even Nintendo themselves was like, we need them to fly a little bit faster.
What if you could use your Clawshots off the Loftwing?
For what though?
Well, because there's some of the floating islands.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That have like that, where you
Right.
find like the treasure chests, the goddess
Right.
cube ones, right? And they use clawshot targets and stuff like that.
I was
And
just
normally what
thinking
you do is you just
Skyloft.
jump off and land somewhere on the island and then clawshot
Yeah,
over.
if you're lucky.
Yeah, if you can aim your landing properly. But if you could just clawshot right off the back of your Loftwing,
Hmm.
that could be very cool.
And if
Assuming
they,
you can get the Loftwing to be stationary enough for you to aim.
the way Breath of the Wild renders the entire world, or it tries
Mhm.
to render the entire world without loading, if they could render like Skyloft, as it does with the other smaller items, that way
Yes.
when you dive into Skyloft, it doesn't have to load, you can just fall into it.
Yes.
Like when you're
Okay.
gliding
Yes.
in Breath of the Wild.
Yes. Make that one map where you have the sky and Skyloft and all those items. Just make it one loading
Yeah.
zone, one map.
Because
They
it
probably won't.
It would be like you're telling me you can do all of this in Breath of the Wild and render like huge portions of Hyrule, like the entire Great Plateau and surrounding areas, but you can't render this medium-sized rock in the sky.
They probably won't because it'll be too much change from the original. But like, that's something I would love because there's so many times where you jump, you try to land in a specific spot on Skyloft, but because of the way the loading zones are, it fades out. It loads for a minute, and then you're dropped in one of the 5 generic landing zones.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm like, I know, I was trying to jump as close to that door as I could, you know?